So sometimes like codependence might fall into transactional love. And then withholding love becomes a motivator.
So there's conditional love. There's conditional love and there's unconditional love of the divine in the Bible. Oh. There's conditional. The unconditional love is the love for his creation, because he said it was good. So, God obviously thinks it's good. God loves it. It's unconditional. The objects of his love. We are the objects of his love. He loves us unconditionally. But in reference to the gospel and the gospel message, it is conditional on. Wait a minute. Maybe it is unconditional. Okay, I need to read a little further. So far, I'm only proving it's unconditional.
We're doing Bible study early.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Let's back out. Out of that. Okay, so I agree with you.
I was waiting for this new.
Oh wow! Look at Holly has done research and openly backtracked. This is a new Holly. Has she done this before? Or so quickly? She did it rather quickly. That's pretty impressive. That shows her concern for this love. She wants to get it right. That's pretty impressive. This is adding more expectation on this topic, which started with napping, and now we're on unconditional love. How do I get back to loathing and hostility and animosity?
Okay, so you were asking. I'm sorry. Let me look. You were having a conversation with Nancy about
self-love. Is that unconditional?
Self-love, and is it conditional or unconditional? Yeah.
Because if we motivate ourselves by withholding love, is that the best motivator? Is that best relationship to have with ourselves and to have with other people?
No, withholding love is abuse.
Why? Does it work?
And yes, it works.
Oh, it works, so it's functional, but you call it abuse. How many people withhold love from themselves? So are they abusing themselves because they withhold love?
Yes. Self-love is important.
So how do we sell somebody who motivates themselves with withholding love? Calling it abuse isn't going to suddenly change people and say, damn it, I'll stop withholding love to motivate myself. That's too big of a jump, isn't it?
Well, how can withholding love from you be anything that leads to something good? Like how do people use that to motivate themselves? I don't get it. Somebody who does that.
Holly?
No, I don't.
Not at
I don't
all.
think so.
Oh, wow. No. Holly does not withhold love from herself.
Oh, okay. I probably do. Yes, I do. I treat myself like the parental interject inside of me.
All those superego injunctions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been doing this group? And you're still not loving yourself?
Is that to everybody or Holly?
Who? Yes. Who are you asking?
You.
Asking you, Holly.
Deef.
Asking me.
Oh, Deef isn't very... Yeah, that's what I thought.
I didn't say I withhold love for myself. I did not take that stance.
You...
To motivate myself. I might do it for other means, but it's not my primary method of motivation. I use pain instead. But some people call me sadistic.
Yeah, so does your test say you're sadistic.
Because pain is passion. So if you can direct pain into passion, then you can motivate yourself into shaping and molding reality. But if you withhold love, it's sort of inverted aggression toward yourself. And that sort of dissipates the energy.
How do you call your pain?
How do you cause pain?
Uh-huh.
You hang out with abusers who poke you and trigger you, and when you discover your trigger, now you know your pain point.
But
you can dive into your pain point.
But I thought the best way is to get rid of those people.
Yeah, no, we like to hang out with narcissists. That's where we like to hang out.
Those people are adversaries that are pointing out your shadow.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to get rid of them after they pointed out your shadow, but once they pointed out some of your pain points, that is valuable information. It can help you integrate your unresolved grief, and it can also help you discover natural motivations of what matters. Your pain points are what matters to you, or what matters to me. Your trauma, my trauma, is very individualized to the individual, to the person. This fucking matters. That's what pain tells you.
Right, okay.
So then that's linked to passion. And the ability to be passionate and hold intensity connects you to something that deeply matters to you. Something that hurts to your core. Something that you can be passionate about. How did that make sense? Or not? Or counters?
Are you more self-confident after you've done that?
Well, if you're driven by pain, pain does give me intuition and visceral feedback. And I can use that to follow, to evaluate how I'm doing towards a certain goal.
Mm-hmm.
What is Act 1? Aggression versus guilt. Morality. Is withholding love morality? Self-morality? How about that? You're not good enough, so you withhold self-love until you do something, or until you get approval from other people, or the world. And then you're kind to yourself a little. So this sort of withholding love is morality territory or guilt territory. That's a complicated argument. Where to start? Okay, Freud wrote a book called Civilization and Its Discontent, or something like that. I stumbled upon this and I thought he made some interesting theories on the world. And let's see if this lands with our earlier discussion of the utility of animosity. Haha.
What do we do with humans having this aggressive instinct? How does human civilization or how do communities compensate for that? Freud writes, men are not gentle creatures who want to be loved and who at the most can defend themselves if they are attacked. They are, on the contrary, creatures among whose instinctual endowments is to be reckoned a powerful share of aggressiveness.
So what if this is true, that part of humanity is a survival instinct, and part of that survival instinct is aggression? And modern day psychology might be trying to erase aggression by just saying, we don't like it, but that doesn't change thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years of survival instincts, of fighting, of aggression to survive to now. So what if we're hardwired with an aggressive drive?
As a result, their neighbor is for them not only a potential helper or sexual object, but also someone who tempts them to satisfy their aggressiveness on him, to exploit his capacity for work without compensation, to use him sexually without his consent, to seize his possessions, to humiliate him, to cause him pain, to torture, and to kill him.
Now, me being so sadistic, I couldn't relate to this so much, so I don't really evaluate people to sexually exploit without consent. Maybe when I was younger, I don't know, I can't relate to it now because I take too many naps, maybe. I'm not looking at people to steal their possessions, but maybe that's because I have enough. So if I had less, then maybe I might have these drives to cause pain and torture, but there's a dark side that we all have, and it has some level of this. This is a more extreme picture, I think, but maybe I need to work on my dark side. I will get better.
What underlies most presentations is this instinctual drive for aggression. Instinctual drive for aggression. This desire to dominate, to hurt other people. Now, Freud then develops a theory called the paradox of civilization. Humans would be happiest if they could be most instinctual, if they could just enjoy a hedonistic lifestyle, be as aggressive as they want, indulge in whatever pleasures they want, and yet humans buy into rules, a social contract that stops them from being able to act instinctually. Civilization allows for greater peace, greater harmony, but it also stifles happiness.
So it's a simple argument. Let's say humans have this id part that's hyper-aggressive and totally selfish. And so without civilization, people would just be savages, and they would just live savage short-term life or something. So civilization on the flip side has to control the savage drive of the Thanatos survival instincts, the id, with a bunch of rules and superego injunctions to sort of make everyone miserable so that as a collective we're happy.
And that's the paradox of civilization. The next question becomes, what happens to these aggressive instincts in these individual people living in this society governed by these peaceful rules? What means does civilization employ in order to inhibit the aggressiveness which opposes it, to make it harmless, to get rid of it, to make it harmless, to get rid of it?
So if civilization is seeing aggression is bad, or aggression needs to be policed, needs to be managed, then civilization creates guilt and morality, and superego rules and order to try to pacify and numb everybody's aggression. And who's the socialization police of modern society? Therapists. One person acts too crazy, you gotta go to therapy, because your aggression is out of control. Or first police, but then if they're crazy, send them to therapy, because we gotta make people harmless and good economic slaves, because that's what civilization wants. I had that on a phone call recently of somebody who just got out of the psych ward. She said, all they want is me medicated and working. They don't care about my emotions. I feel drugged out from the medication. I don't have any reason to live, but everybody else is happy if I'm drugged up. That's what she shared.
Harmless, to get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. His aggressiveness is introjected, internalized, sent back to where it came from.
Look, it's Freud saying introjects, superego injunction to invert aggression inward to attack the ego. That's civilization's fix to manage the threat of savages that would destroy civilization, because there's this id that just wants to kill and steal everyone's stuff and rape people without consent. Welcome, Holly 2. It's unmuted.
Sorry.
Get rid of it. It is directed towards his own ego. Get rid of it. Internalized. Get rid of it. Sent back to where it came from. If it doesn't get expressed outward, it gets channeled inward. Attack ourselves is guilt. Get rid of it. Guilt. Get rid of it. Sent back to where it came from. We deserve punishment, like we've done something wrong. A person feels guilty, devout people would say sinful, when he has done something which he knows to be bad. But then we notice how little this answer tells us. Guilt, get rid of it. That even when a person has not actually done the bad thing, but has only recognized in himself an intention to do it, he may regard himself as guilty. And the question then arises of why the intention is regarded as equal as the deed.
This is a pretty interesting nuance. So, guilt is about the intention to do the bad behavior, or the thought, or the drive, the impulse. It's not about accomplishing the thing. Somehow we've been superego programmed to self-monitor the drive. But does that work? When you self-monitor the drive, does that go into your shadow? Is that where Jung dived into shadow work instead of Freud? And then your shadow takes over and you act out the stuff you're guilty about. Is this the best way to introject your aggression inward? Self-police yourself with the superego, and then feel guilty on any sort of intention from your id desires. And then you're just living with this constant guilt, excess toxic superego. Is this the price of civilization? And maybe that's why we need animosity towards a third party, which was also in his book, but not on this video. That was the solution, to have a common enemy as another country to dump all our aggression and focus it. Otherwise, we're going to kill ourselves, inverting aggression.
Guilt, get rid of it. Why the intention is regarded as equal as the deed. For Freud, we are filled with aggressive, hostile intentions. And as a result, we feel incredibly guilty. Get rid of it. Incredibly guilty. Get rid of it. Even though it's just an intention. There was no actual behavior that was wrong. Freud ends his book on a question. What will happen with this human instinctual drive toward aggression and self-destruction? What underlies human instinct? And how that might inform the way we interact with people and interact with ourselves. So how can we discharge our feelings of instinctual aggression, discharge guilt to make it harmless, to get rid of it, guilt, get rid of it, guilt, get rid of it, sent back to where it came from.
Discharging instinctual aggression seems to me a rather inefficient, stupid strategy. Seems like it's just a mask of another superego injunction to say excess aggression is a waste. Where I'm like going like, oh, if you have this internal dynamite, wouldn't it be useful to figure out how to use it adaptively? Why would you spend your whole life just like neutralizing landmines and explosives and black powder? Wouldn't you see what kind of fireworks you can make or weapons or something if you have all this excess explosives naturally in your body? Couldn't you make that explosives into passion and love and flirting and fun stuff? Why would you just keep disarming yourself and discharging? Because what if your hatred is your doorway to your disowned love? What if your hatred is a safe way you can express your vulnerable love until you gain better language and relationships to express yourself more disarmed without using your shield of hatred and aggression? Because who wants to just go out there and say, I need love, and just get stomped on? I want to connect with you. You're pretty cool. And then just I don't like you. So no one does that. I guess kids do that. Yeah. We want to play and then you just find another one. But as adults, we slowly get sensitive to rejection. Right? Huh. So aggression turns inward. So one of the problems with guilt and superego injunctions, maybe I didn't cover this that perfectly in person. I don't know if I'm going to cover this much today. I'll throw it in the chat if people like visuals. This is a too ambitious mega map that it's going to be very difficult to share or fully cover, and it's incomplete. So. But this is a developmental map of fragility, resistance, and then neuroticism. So a more fragile borderline state is more disowning, fragmented, dissociation. And then a more narcissistic hard shell state, a defense, is denial splitting, transference resistance, which I'll try to go into part 2. And then superego injunction, that's neuroticism. So that's where you repress your hate by turning it inward and judging yourself to limit your authentic voice. Neuroticism is sort of like, I will withhold my natural aggressive tendencies, my natural spontaneity, because I think relationship is more important. But then the price of that is you lose touch with yourself. You've repressed your needs. So what was I going to try to introduce with? Oh, guilt. So, guilt, negation, and shame. Those are sort of the 3 emotions. And, so, let's deal with narcissism first, or narcissistic defenses versus borderline defenses. A lot of codependents try to guilt a narcissist or judge narcissists, set boundaries, and it fails. If setting boundaries worked, then there wouldn't be all these narcissist videos and community and this group that keeps meeting. It was so easy just to set boundaries and judge them and set injunctions, then wouldn't be this industry. Because it doesn't work, because the narcissists, they have more self-aggression than a codependent. How many people would consider this to be the reality? So this is an example of Jacob's self-hate from earlier this week. I thought this was a nice reveal. Except this video caused somebody in the group in person to get triggered, go into meta mode, and attack just socio-cultural issues because he felt the vulnerability of that contagion transference and then had to attack the video. In the early days of Zoom, we had that more often. People just attack videos because they got triggered. We'll see if that happens today. This group is pretty chill because they've all napped, so maybe not.
You can see visibly his struggle with his own person, in quotes. There's a violence in Jacob's language towards himself. Even when he jokes about himself and his condition, you can hear his low opinion of himself. I don't know what it was about that comment, but it just like shoved my self-hate in my face in a way that was like really uncomfortable.
So this was a YouTube comment that somehow triggered some self-reflection, and the part that he fixated on is if there's a violence in Jacob's language towards himself. So that is showing not only withholding love, not only self-loathing, it's self-violence that he has as a narcissist. He uses hatred to the level of violence to contain his inner chaos.
I'm just feeling it so viscerally.
And there's the visceral feeling. So he's guided by that visceral feeling, and that was an earlier question with Nancy. If I feel my pain, that visceral feeling of pain tells me what's important. That gives me the confidence. I'm not going to give my confidence to approval from losers, from therapists, from group members. I guess I could, but then I'll be reliant on your guys' approval and shifting things and God images, and I'll paint myself into a trap and I'll hate myself. But I might do that later if I get bored. Pain, viscerally, shows you where you are. It localizes you, tells you what's important. So his visceral pain is this pointer pointed out his core.
Just like how it feels like even my appearance has changed. Like I'm looking at myself and I look legitimately disgusting looking in the camera right now. And maybe I'm just having a bad hair day or something. But I don't even look attractive to myself right now.
He feels ugly to himself. Just this statement, this reflection, seeing how much he's violent to himself and self-hates himself. He's starting to feel some of his shame or guilt.
I don't think I've ever split on myself this hard before. I feel like I'm just like a shell, a husk, and they're just like little broken bits of a child that are just kind of wiggling around inside of me, and that's not much of a thing to hate now, is it?
He's still hating himself. He's seeing his fragmented inner self, rejecting his sort of borderline, more primitive self by negating it with denial and splitting. We even use the word split. This sort of inner war.
It's not even worth hating. It's ineffectual.
It's not even worth hating. That's still hating. That's negating. This thing isn't so important. I'm just going to say it's less important. That's even worse than hating. You're trying to use apathy to say it doesn't need to exist. That's like invisible hate. That's like erasing type of hate.
Insignificant. Somebody acknowledging it without me intending for them to acknowledge it just sent me through something awful. And it's like an anger towards myself. It's an anger for not being better. An anger for not being enough. It's an anger for not being better. An anger for not being enough. It's an anger.
Oh. There's a little bit of a nose flinch, disgust. It wasn't that. But if you look at his eyes, I would argue that there's paranoia and terror there. Because he's losing control. He's keeping his inner world in control by self-violence. Now that his inner child part that he's hating on is a bit more up into his consciousness, now that terror and paranoia is coming out through his eyes. And he wants to quash it by his mouth and his sort of disgust mechanism to try to get it back in control. Right.
An anger for not being.
The lower jaw is sort of the aggression, sort of that primitive id instinct. So maybe he has that drive to steal people's stuff and have sex with people without consent or something, whatever Freud said. He's got that primitive, because it's separate, it's not integrated. It doesn't know how to navigate shared realities, so it's just pure killer instinct, maybe.
Enough. It's an anger for not being better. An anger for not being enough. I don't even know who I am right now. I think I'm like having like a depersonalization moment where I just don't, nothing feels fucking real right now. I feel
depersonalization moment. He's starting to regress into fragments, into his borderline self. Dissociate, DPDR. A lot of shame, or fragmented. Being flooded by different sensations, and then he loses his shell. The borderline has that snapshot shell. I mean, the narcissist has a snapshot where the borderline just merges with containers or emotional flow.
So out of it. Why did this comment like fucking throw me off so much?
He's angry at the comment. Look at that. Why?
That feels correct about how I feel about myself. I feel violent towards myself. I feel violent towards myself. I don't know how people look at me and don't think I'm disgusting and monstrous and weird, dramatic. I almost feel sad, like an urge to cry, almost. I'm upset at being not myself. I don't know if I'm upset at myself because I'm fake, or if I'm fake because I'm upset at myself. Fucking broken. Fucking broken. Like, there's something evil in that we are being forced to suffer the way that we do, and also to hurt the people around us. It's just evil for everybody. Maybe I'm just not far enough in healing.
Not good enough.
Fuck me. Fuck me.
His good videos end with that. Fuck me. Because he owns his frustration. That's the price of using this sort of self-violent way of navigating the world. Your relationship to yourself gets mirrored to your relationships to others. That's sort of the land of transference. And this is a difficult framing that I played with a little in the journal, that transference resistance is more about your inner relationship of denial splitting, self-hate, withholding love. And then that gets reflected into your caregiver to you relationship. That's daddy and mommy issues. And then that ends up being transference with other people. So transference is the type of projection that's sort of a snapshot, where pure projection is just projecting your willpower, your emotions onto other people, or your bad behaviors onto others. You disown it, and you dissociate and fragment, and you have a much more exciting, passionate, chaotic life experience. But it's up and down. You also have like heaven and hell all at once. We'll try to cover that difference later. But the disowning part is where you're overseen, and then the denial splitting part is when you're invisible, where you're unseen. And we've talked about this in other videos and a lot of different metaphors, and I'm going to try to link it today and probably fail. But because it's in my mind, but getting it out into good stuff.
In meetings, sometimes people fight to get the spotlight, to be visible. But at the same time, if I give them too much spotlight, they want to hide. It seems like people cry about wanting to be seen, but they also not want to be seen. Why are they consistent? Do they?
So this is sort of the split. There's a drive to be seen, and there's a drive to be invisible. And I'm going to link the drive to this sloppy mega map that I just sort of wrote up before the meeting in person, which is an improvement on my journal post last night, which was sort of sloppy, but got a little better. The drive to be seen is in response to transference resistance. You feel invisible. Because I'm trying to figure out how to teach you how to spot transference. and all the word stuff is too damn confusing. So that but the feeling of transference, when someone's transferring onto you, you feel invisible. Because they're denying your reality, they're denying seeing you, and they're projecting their transference onto you. So narcissistic injury is being unseen, invisible. And borderline defenses is being hypervisible. And we had the in-person example of one of our members' daughter flooding her, and then she was fresh of the merge of being hyper exposed, and she flooded our group. And we all acted like codependent, freaked out rescuers. Or most of us. So I'm fresh off the hyper exposed. I'm going to try to cover that in Act 3. But right now we're going to talk about transference, which is more about invisible, the pain of invisibility. And then maybe we'll try to link it to transference. This is a very complicated journey.
It causes a bit of a crisis, because if you don't really exist in the mind of the narcissist, then you find yourself sort of scrambling to be relevant. When you don't exist, you feel the threat of not existing. And so you're always conjuring forth your own self in the context of the effacement of your identity in the mind of the narcissist.
In my history, if someone makes me feel invisible, sometimes it's just I really don't have the strength to make them feel invisible. That would be trying to fight narcissism with narcissism. It doesn't work.
The experience we have when we confront narcissistic defenses in practice is often very de-skilling, where the winds of narcissism blow and we are hapless, like a trauma almost, of confronting intimately the narcissistic defense.
So that's one clue if you're dealing with transference. And if you slowly can spot it, you're not being seen. It's actually a very adaptive role. You get to see why narcissists have no empathy, because they're seeing the snapshot. They're not seeing you. They're throwing insults at the snapshot. They're throwing insults at a representation onto you. That's transference neurosis. That's transference. It's, they need to have a better word than transference, but that's the word they throw out there. So the trap of transference neurosis is that in therapy, if once the transference happens, things are gone. So the easy key for transference is just to spot it, realize it's not you, and then bam, you don't get into this invisibility war that he's talking about. Your counter-transference didn't jump in. It's hard. I'm working on it. This might make more sense on video. Maybe, or maybe not.
Transference neurosis, a phenomenon in which the patient transfers all of their infantile feelings, wishes, fantasies, impulses onto the person of the therapist, who becomes, in fact, the most important person in the patient's life. Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life.
So there's a clue of transference. Transference neurosis.
Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life. Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life.
When you get the pull where you want the person to see you, they're the most important person. You want to like grab them and force them to see you. You're making them the most important person. That's your counter-transference. And if they insult you and make you feel like the worst person in the world, that's also most important person in the world. And you fall for it. You take it personal where they're just acting out transference. That's the tricky thing. I'm trying to disarm this attachment style that's very manipulative. But beautiful, but manipulative.
Transference neurosis. So rather than waiting, as was the tradition, for transference feelings to flower into this full-blown neurosis, Davenlu found that by dealing with transference feelings and resistances against them from the start, two very important things happened. One is that by encouraging the patient to face and experience and express all of their complex mixed feelings toward the therapist, there was a very rapid and wide opening into the unconscious, so that the person or persons the therapist had come to represent come into full view. And there's a very direct and rapid connection between the transference and the past, which then comes alive in the room, and the past can be resolved in the present.
So this is the doorway. If you're in transference and you can spot the other person's transference, become impersonal, not counter-transference to create repetition compulsion, then you can get a doorway into their inner history, their unconscious, and you could help guide them to feel it out, or you could take that information to manipulate them in the future. But it's a great opportunity when someone's transferring onto you their deepest wounds through hatred, often the safe way to say what they really care about. If we develop this skill, which I haven't figured out how to cover fully, but we'll see later today. The second part.
And the past can be resolved in the present. The other reason was, in fact, to prevent the development of a transference neurosis, which is often impossible to dig out of. If they're not being faced, by definition, they are going to become a barrier to treatment. Transference neurosis. The person of the therapist has become the most important thing, and it's as if their very reason for coming to therapy has kind of vanished. Transference neurosis.
So this is trauma bonding. This is actually, it's close. It might be more accurate than trauma bonding. It's not as exciting, but actually it is, but it doesn't sound as exciting. So you have a transference with a therapist or a friend or a group, and you project a caregiver onto them. And then that relationship actually gets in the way of growing and changing yourself. You'll actually self-sabotage yourself because you want that transference to continue. It's a bit counterintuitive in your head. But that's sort of how this dynamic works. When transference comes in and you don't see the other person, you only see your transference. You become attached to that, and then now you're reliving some childhood bond, some fantasy. And then that actually ends up repetition compulsion. It keeps you from growing out of it. Yeah. But that transference is a doorway. If the other person can sort of say, look, there's transference and there's me. If they create a triangle to say, look, there's me and there's your transference. What are the feelings that are coming up with these 2 points? Creating a triangle to try to integrate those lost emotions. So it's also an opportunity. But it's also usually people fall into repetition compulsion because that's easy pattern. The push-pull of love-hate.
A barrier, transference neurosis, a barrier to the work. So by inviting those feelings to be experienced and expressed in fantasy, I'm thinking of a particular example, memories will come up about how that happened in the past and directly experiencing feelings then toward the genetic figure. And often spontaneously, the patient will then see how they have been playing out this dynamic in their current life.
That's the big thing. That's the awareness. If people can see through their transference and see how the patterns are repeating through multiple relationships, then they can have the agency to make a change. So that sort of needs to happen in a relationship where somebody is able to reflect back the two sides. There's a transference representation, and there's me, that you're the canvas that the transference is being put on. Can we differentiate that and then create a triangle of two people, old relationship and current relationship, plus the feeling underneath? Integrate that feeling, now you're free to start the next cycle of a headache or something.
He was able to see this link that in his mind, right, all women, mother, me, wife, were these critical, demanding figures who were impossible to please. And on the third day, he said, yeah, when you put pressure on me, it was to help me. It was for my benefit. But my mother always put this pressure on me for her own needs, and so did my wife. So first you're going to link those people on the triangle of person, and then begin to distinguish between them, so that again you become separated from, you are no longer just like the mother, right? You're really beginning to get separated from that and seen in a realistic way as someone who is helping them to resolve their issues, get free, and have a life of their own. The transference is a distorting force. It's seeing you not as you, right, but as somebody from the past. So by dealing with that and getting to who this is really about, again, you become who you actually are, without distortion,
So dealing with transference is dealing with the distortion. Because part of denial splitting is splitting love-hate into two different parts and then distorting the world, owning one side and projecting a transference relationship onto somebody else of the disowned part. Denial splitting, cognitive distortion, through blaming somebody, external locus of control. Some sort of negation. So transference resistance, we know this through different metaphors. Pain of being invisible, being unseen, and also they shared it with this clip. It was Jacob and Crystal talking about their therapy experiences and why they failed.
What makes you feel loved? I knew you were going to make that face.
See, he's angry at the question. That's how little self-love he has. Because all he knows is self-hate. But self-hate is actually love. This is fucking important, so I'm going to harm myself. I'm going to have violence on myself. Because this fucking matters. The price of the self-violence is that you act out the violence everywhere and you don't get what you want. And in the long term, in the short term you do, but it doesn't build any sort of long-term connections.
Makes you feel loved. I don't think I can think of a time in my life where I have felt genuinely loved in my, at all. But I could, really believe it and stick with it. This is actually a good question here. Do you feel unconditional love for your therapist? No, I don't. I view my relationship with my therapist as a transaction.
Transaction. Literally was thinking the same thing, yep.
It's I pay this person to listen to my problems and, do whatever. Transaction.
If you get that unconditional love, if you start to feel that from them, then that's a sign of something else. That's daddy issues or mommy issues coming up. For real.
Yeah, exactly.
See? That's transference. She recognized transference is bad. But what's her response when there's transference?
Exactly.
I've had therapists where I've had sensual dreams about them, and I'm immediately I'm canceling. Immediately, we're done.
So the opportunity to work through those transference feelings of a core attachment wound happen and then she cuts and runs. It's too vulnerable. She's seen too much. She wants too much. But also the therapist would also fall for it too. So being able to help the patient navigate transference, it is a high skill. Like transference focused therapy or ISTDP actively uses transference. Most other ones try to avoid it because it's hard.
I can't. Daddy issues or mommy issues coming up. I can't. Maybe that's why like cluster Bs like don't have good retention in therapy or whatever, because we see it for what it is that it's a transaction. I know I'm paying you to care about me. Like this isn't authentic. Like once I get what I need, I'm not gonna come back. Once I get what I need, I'm not gonna come back.
Okay, I struggle with this from like the day to day where I'm like, okay, am I mentally ill? Or do I just see the world for what it is?
For what it is.
Opposed to like what everybody else.
Yes, not buying into the facade. It is. It's all circus.
I mean, honestly, it's like,
all circus.
How am I supposed to walk into a therapist's office and be like, man, this therapist really cares about me and not about the fact that I'm paying them like $100-something
right.
every other week to come in and say whatever bullshit. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, because it's like, even if I did start to feel that way, it's like, I know what I need is friendship, and I know that I don't want to pay for it. So it's like, even at the end of the day, that kind of like comes back in a bitter end. It's like, I just, like, can we talk like without me paying you or something? Like, I don't know.
It's like, yeah, want proof that you care? Let me stop paying. There you go.
I'm mentally ill. You know I have financial troubles. Like, come on, I'm not rich.
Transaction.
Once I get what I need, I'm not going to come back.
Transaction.
That's sort of how guarded they are. That's the supply angle. But it's also honest. A lot of therapists, that's their role too. So they're able to see through the sort of superego, cultural superego playing nice. So transference is sort of this pain of being invisible, being a snapshot. So being a snapshot is
when we are babies, we appropriate objects, we consume them, we digest them, we assimilate them, and we merge and fuse with them. We move them across the self-not self boundary. They become self. The primordial ego cannot tell the difference between self and object. So it devours, it's ruthless, it's cruel and sadistic. The narcissist confuses external objects with internal objects. So all his emotional energy goes inwards because external objects are frustrating and painful.
So all the energy going inwards to you feels like you're unseen. That's why you feel invisible. They're taking a snapshot of you and the rest of you is ignored. Or they're trying to force a snapshot onto you and it's one-dimensional and you feel unseen because they're all consuming other people's boundaries with all this jargon. But the snapshot is a good sort of simple metaphor of transference and this pain of being unseen. This sort of one-dimensional view of other people. That's my attempt at trying to simplify transference.
And because there is no difference in the narcissist's mind between external and internal, he ends up investing all his emotional energy in internal objects. Healthy people, they're like stars or like planets. The narcissist is all over the place. There's a supermassive black hole in the middle. And there are spirals and spirals of introjects circling this black hole, never integrated, most of them not interacting with each other. The narcissist identifies with your representation in his mind. You could do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. He never interacts with you. He interacts with your image in his mind, and it's usually idealized or devalued never realistic.
So if you just expand transference from not just mommy and daddy issues, being a snapshot is the same dynamic as transference. Your identity, yourself, is being denied and negated. And it feels painful to be unseen. And you take it personal because as a child, maybe you also were unseen and made you a people pleaser. So now you're chasing for love. So you respond with countertransference by falling into codependent patterns of people-pleasing, moral judgment, perfectionism, all the different bad patterns of how codependents hate on themselves. But those patterns are your transference, or being triggered by their transference triggers you countertransference. And then now you have a perfect repetition compulsion of two parties stuck in the past, continuing in a new situation which is going to be doomed. But it's an opportunity if either party can say, look, here's a representation and here's me, shove it in the other person's face and try to get to the unresolved feeling in the bottom. So using a triangle to try to use transference and countertransference to get to the unresolved memory, the grief, integrate that, get back to the split, to combine the split. So instead of falling into transference, which would be denying and splitting, try to combine the split. That's, more advanced. So Act 3, the pain of being hyperexposed. Pure projection instead of transference projection. So transference is a projection of a representation. It's a snapshot. Projection is a projection of part of yourself that you disown. You can project your will, you can project your hatred, you can project your good qualities, you can project it outward, disown it, and then enmesh with the other person that you're projecting with. So then you can have love bombing and you can have devaluing, splitting, all the enmeshment, the oceanic merging. This causes the pain of being hyperseen, but it also causes the love bombing of being, the joy of being fully loved, getting the borderline love of a favorite person. They see you as all good. But then the price of them seeing you as all good is they can also see you as all bad. Hyperexpose you. That's the more primitive borderline defenses. Relationship merging. Being a failed narcissist, the narcissist creates the snapshot. And then the upgraded narcissist becomes a fucked up neurotic. Okay, neurotics aren't. Neurotics are neurotic. Okay, I don't like neurotics. You guys can love each other. Maybe I'm hating on neurotics too much. After you get from neurotics, you can become ambivalent depressive, but I don't put that in there. Instead, I said you need to learn dialogue and gain perspective and have a social self. No one needs to worry about that because that's impossible. Right now, we're just trying to work on daddy and mommy issues. So the downside of this is that you end up you disown your aggression. Or you just act it out. Or you get someone else to act out your aggression. So then you can't direct your life. Or you try to stuff your aggression and you'd be like super people pleaser nice, and then you're fragmented. That's the price of not owning shame. Shame is connection. Shame is the glue that puts your fragments together. So if you have a bad relationship with shame, then so this leads to this sort of relationship with the inner void. Instead of seeing source energy, you get scared of getting sucked into emptiness. How do I cover this part? So the price of being hyperexposed is you end up feeling paranoid. Like
you
this.
have that thing where like you'll notice somebody is like kind of off and you'll just immediately assume it's about you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if people don't make eye contact, or if they like don't say hi, like even like
they leave you on red.
Yeah.
I lose my fucking mind. I'm like, oh, it's more of what do they think I did wrong, not what I did. It's usually like, what did I do to piss them off, and why are they perceiving it like that? Because I can't think of anything I did wrong. What the fuck is wrong with you guys? My straight up rages though are like scared, and I feel like that's part of splitting, right? Just having those full blown rages. It's like nothing matters other than my emotions and what I'm feeling in the moment. Just yelling and destroying whatever the fuck is in front of me.
See? Nothing matters because all he's doing is acting out. Because he doesn't have the reflection to own the bigger context. All that matters is his impulse, and he gets taken over. Or he can project it onto somebody else and get them to act it out. Or both people act out the disowned or the non-localized emotion. Creates chaotic, fun mess. But it's fragmented, and by not reflecting on the shame of it all, you aren't able to recongeal and have that negative and that complicated, chaotic experience form a self. You're always sort of fragmented. So that's the splitting he's describing.
We made plans for like me and two of my other friends to hang out, and it was just supposed to be an us thing. And then some people felt unincluded, and so they were like, "Can we invite those guys?" And I was like, "What the fuck do you mean?" And I was like, "Am I not good? You just don't want to hang out with just me? We made these plans."
That's a great example. That's such a great example.
It was so stupid, but it was funny. Yeah.
No, it's so true. Like even like with family things with me too. Like if I wanted to hang out with just like one member of my family, and they immediately say, "All right, well let's invite all the others." I'm like, "Oh, you don't just want to hang out with me." Like you need other people to be the buffer. You need somebody else to like be more fun or something like that.
I'm not fun enough for you, and you need other people around. Like I'm not worth hanging out with if it's just me. Oh, it makes sense.
That's the sort of hyper-exposed feeling they both have. That if somebody else invites somebody else, it's all about trying to negate them. That's the paranoia. That sort of mind state of too much hyper-exposure, both towards yourself, but also towards your favorite person. So that's a pain of being too exposed. Leads to paranoia. Also, not directing your aggression outward. You don't have healthy boundaries of where you start and other people begin, where you end and where other people begin, where that is. So you're constantly confused at where the boundaries are. So you'll be paranoid. I don't know if this is more narcissistic or borderline, but this is about paranoia.
The sadistic person oftentimes is someone who's actually paranoid. That if he gets close to you and becomes intimate with you, that you're going to sadistically attack him. So he becomes the attacker. So actually, although it looks like he's powerful in the role of the attacker, underneath, he's afraid you're going to be the sadistic attacker who's going to attack him. So fundamentally, he actually has a paranoid transference.
And then in person, I use the term scared shitless baby. So counterphobic sadistic attack often is driven out of paranoia and pure terror. And then the paranoid transference, the contagion of paranoia, transfers the scared shitless baby into the target. And then the target, our guest today and the rest of our group, we were acting out the scared shitless of her daughter. The daughter was throwing all kinds of attacks and judgment on her as a terrible mother. And then we were trying to process all the insults. And indirectly, we're feeling the paranoia because she was like, oh, I can't text this. Because if I text this, I'll come home and she'll attack me more or something. And they were just neutral comments. And then, I can't text this, she's going to text back more evil stuff. It only took 2 texts. And then she moved to the dad. She was worried that our text would have escalated, caused some harm, because she was merging with the paranoid transference. The scared shitless baby. That's the price of being overexposed. That's the price of disowning your aggression. Not having a healthy outlet of asserting your sense of self and sharing with others.
And though he's managing it by being the attacker, paranoid transference. He's managing it by being the attacker, paranoid transference. Also, there'll be forms of projection, because the attacker going to feel some guilt over inflicting pain. He'll deny his guilt.
Nope, you deserved it.
He doesn't have to feel guilt about the pain he's inflicting.
Nope, you deserved it.
He doesn't have to feel guilt.
Nope, maybe it didn't even happen.
Paranoid transference.
Nope, never happened. Or nope, that's not actually what happened.
He doesn't have to feel guilt.
Nope, you're overreacting. Nope, you deserved it.
Because that's his defense of manic denial, to avoid facing the guilt over the pain he's inflicting.
Nope, you deserved it.
Paranoid transference.
Nope, never happened. Or
manic denial.
Nope, didn't matter.
Paranoid transference.
Nope, you're overreacting. Nope, didn't matter.
Manic denial.
Nope, maybe it didn't even happen.
Paranoid transference.
Nope, never happened. Or
manic denial.
Nope, that's not actually what happened.
Paranoid transference.
Nope, you deserved it.
Manic denial.
Nope, never happened. Or
paranoid transference. Manic denial.
Because it's fast. Paranoid is your mind spinning with time distortion, so those back and forth is trying to simulate the speed of getting lost in paranoid spinning, and aggression just going everywhere, and you gotta just speed up to deal with any potential threat, because you're disoriented, you're not localized, you're not reading dangers properly. You're overreading, you're underreading, you're frantic. You're just going with flow of confusion. And underneath that, you're scared shitless. And the goal is to get other people to be scared shitless, so then now you can disown your scared shitless part and act out the aggression and paranoia, because that feels better than being scared shitless. So what we need to integrate our hatred.
Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. This is a bit harder of a sell, but
simply, this is a simple model of layers. So at the top layer, your outer layer, you have defenses against people seeing you being vulnerable. Keep people far away, put on a mask. Underneath that defense is your guilt. So guilt is the doorway to your unconscious emotions. And typically you use your guilt to try to manage your rage. That was the first video, or the Freud video. You're using your guilt to try to keep your aggression in check by directing your aggression towards your ego, towards yourself, with superego injunctions. But underneath the rage is rage and love and grief. And then the denial split is hatred and love. Your desire to connect is the love, and then your hatred is a safe way to express your love. But it's a way that rejects other people, so then you don't get love. So it's kind of, that's why it's a split. It's a dangerous way to express what you care about, but it pushes other people away, so you don't get love back. But if you express love, other people could say, fuck you, you get rejected and you get stomped. So you express your love through hatred. You express what matters through hatred, because hatred...
Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you. Your hatred is extremely important. It tells you what is missing inside you.
If you aren't able to voice your hatred, Nancy.
But isn't that an oxymoron?
Explain more.
Well, isn't it our love and hatred is the opposite of each other? How
They're
can
the
you do
opposites
it?
of the same coin. If you reject your hatred, then you disconnect from your love. What if that's the truth?
How?
How? Because you don't have any passion. You cut off your hatred, then your love has no passion.
But how does hatred got to do with love?
Because hatred gives you the door to your sadness, right here, your grief. And your grief washes over you to allow you to get back to your innocence of, I care, I want connection, I want to be loved, I want to be seen, it hurts to be human. But if you link love as transactional love, where you're controlling the other person's attachment, that's not really love. That's just using guilt tripping.
Right.
Which might be what you know. If you grew up with guilt tripping as love, you don't know what real love is. You don't know what passionate love is. You don't know what love is that destroys all boundaries. Uncivilized love is dangerous. Yep. We try to police it so we can make everyone lemmings. Our society does that. So, okay, so here's an argument. Your hatred, your rage, is like when you say, I don't give a fuck anymore. This fucking matters. I'm gonna break social rules. I'm gonna insult. I'm gonna break my own moral boundaries. I'm gonna say fuck it to all this superego judgment and bullshit. And I'm gonna express my hatred. By definition, if you're expressing something and you just ignore all your inner policing, that means it matters to you. That means, where is it? Oh, here. That means you're getting closer to pain that matters to you. That means you're getting closer to unresolved grief. And underneath that is your innocence, is your spontaneous love. this part of your love has been disowned. Let's go back to this part. Oh, do you judge your desire to connect?
Yeah, I think it's...
Aha! You disown your neediness, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I overcompensate. It's being a doctor. I think that's my cover. That's my cover.
So, that's the cover. So that's the shame. Shame is a way of covering up, disowning. If you disown your neediness, your desire to connect, then you'll overdo the other emotions. Hatred, defense, paranoia. So if you disown your love, for whatever reason, then you'll overdo hatred and paranoia. That's your way of expressing love safely. That's your way of loving yourself, by being paranoid someone's going to attack you. That's your way of expressing how much you care about the world, by hating shit. Because you don't have the language, and you don't have the attachment to share your desire for love and connection. Or it was dangerous, it was squashed. You don't have confidence to express your soft side. Desire to connect. The sadness that you can't know everything. You have to be vulnerable and to be intimate.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Scary.
Sadness is beautiful, though. Sadness is beautiful, though. So sadness is the grief. The grief and love are linked together. And then Melanie Klein theory, paranoid schizoid, the next level up is ambivalent depressive. So part of growing up is owning that you care about stuff and you don't get what you want. The world is selective, life is mortal, and you just own that. So you have to become ambivalent to the ways of the world and still engage, still love, even though you know that other people might not reflect that love back into you. And that's fucking sad. You're breaking out of fantasy and you're joining the shared world where you have to respect other people's agency. Or you don't have to, but other people's agency, they don't care about your needs. So that's going to lead to sadness and grief. Ambivalent, depressive position. And you still continue loving. That's being an adult. But if you want to stay a codependent and withhold love and think that changes the world, you can stay in that state. Yeah. But that's repetition, compulsion, and all the other fucking labels. Struggles.
Is it me? Is it something
Here's
else?
a big thing for me too. There's always this nagging fear that the person who we fear has judged us, well, mostly as bad, just to put it bluntly, has seen something true.
Yeah.
That we desperately want to know if they've seen something true.
That's sort of the paranoia. Nancy? Question?
Okay, what is your definition of love?
More context?
Emotional love? What is it? In your own opinion?
Well, we started where the Greeks have multiple types of love. And then I could try to dive into that, but I don't feel that's your question. A pragmatic definition of love, let's throw that out there and see how it lands, is cooperation with reality, living in grace. How does that answer your question, Nancy?
I still don't get it.
Do you understand grace?
Yes.
Grace is a gift. I would say
Uh-huh.
grace is a gift that you can't reject.
Okay. Yeah.
So God gives you grace. Sometimes grace is wrapped up in shit. The wrapping paper
Yeah.
is all fucking ugly and painful and traumatized and fucked up parents and abusive. It's up to you to accept that shitty outside wrapping and live in grace and try to find the gift underneath all that fucking crap.
Mm-hmm.
So an attitude of love is living in grace, recognizing that you can reject the gift, but God's just going to keep shoving that crappy gift back into your face. And that's not love. That's rejecting grace. So love is a state of grace. Where you might get crappy gifts, you might be dealt a crappy hand, but it's up to you to figure out where the hidden gift is. Okay. When you do that, the world gives you more love, gives you more grace, gives you more gifts, and then now it's a win-win experience of loving and cooperating with reality.
Okay.
I need to know what that is. I need to know what that is.
So you're ruminating about her because she's a lived body so that you can interact with her energy to revisit a past denied expression of saying, see me. Why can't you see me? Why are you leaving me? That's the unspoken desire as a child. That's one example. You stuff your soft side of saying, I don't like being alone. I'm scared. I don't understand. What did I do wrong? I miss you. You deny that expression, or they ignored it. They shut it down. So you have this yearning, this love, to want to connect. That's been suppressed, denied in your unconscious. So having a new transference partner is an opportunity to give voice to that and reconnect that lost love part. But most people have to go through rage and hatred, because rage and hatred will tell you what matters. It'll get to your core pain and your grief. Then those tears, maybe when you act out the rage and grief and you kill the therapist in ISTDP, that's usually what happened. That's common. So you'll transfer onto the therapist and then you'll visualize death onto the therapist. You act out all your hatred. Then you'll have grief and realize, oh, I wanted to kill somebody else, not the therapist. Alright. I already killed them. And then you get to your sadness, and then after you get to your sadness, you get to your love. So that's... But without experiencing that, you get nothing, because...
It's in need of an experience, not an explanation. It's in need of an experience, not an explanation. It's in need of an experience, not an explanation. It's in need of an
Because if we're just hanging out with explanations, which is why this is a hard topic, we're just hanging out in defenses against emotional closeness. We're hanging out in defenses against intensity. We're hanging out in defenses against passion. What kind of fucking life is that? How boring would that be? Let's get messy. Isn't that what intimacy and sex is about? Is there anything else in this video? Why can't you see me? That inner child that wants connection, that wanted connection when you were younger, it's getting an opportunity to come into your consciousness now, using it as a projection proxy. Why can't you see me?
I need to know what that is.
Why are you leaving me? Okay, 9 o'clock, running out of time. Ooh. Who wants any wrap-up or confusion or something? what made sense, what didn't, who's healed, who's not, who wants to spread some rage on me, what, give me something, I can't jump into your guy's head.
You create that differentiation triangle that you're talking about to deal with the transference, the countertransference, to look at the relationship between the old, the current, and the way we feel about it.
Yes, they call that the triangle of persons.
If you bring a caregiver into there, how do you avoid some of the pitfalls of that? Like the whole withholding love part.
Well, your caregiver is your transference. You gotta find somebody else as a transference canvas that can hold space to let you get to the hidden feeling of the old parental relationship.
Okay.
A lot of therapy actually tries to get you to go back to your caregiver figure and then confront them. But usually that never works. I haven't heard success stories of that working. Maybe 5%, 10%. So you don't need that. You can use a proxy, a transference canvas, or a chair. Maybe Gestalt therapy uses a chair. Family constellation uses proxies of people or a drawing of people. So you externalize the transference into a physical body of somebody else who role plays that. Psychodrama. So there's different ways of pulling up the transference and then having somebody else be the current other. The current other provides containment, provides a space to help you merge into the transference emotion and just get lost with that emotion instead of worrying about current stuff. And then maybe the other figure can slowly help you or witness you when you get to the hidden feeling, the unconscious feeling of your past, and emote it. Because if you just emote it alone, the wound happened in a relationship. It needs to re-happen in another relationship. If it happens in isolation, then that validates abandonment terror. You're not witnessed. Maybe it can work, but probably you need a witness. So you need some sort of container. So they have triangle conflict and they have triangle of persons. The triangle of persons is kind of boring because it's just transference and other person. Kelly.
No. I wanted to go back to that one of the circles. And overdoing love, you said. I think I missed part of what you were saying when. Oh, dang it. When you overdo love to compensate for sort of like an imbalance, maybe, or what?
Well, you overdo resentment, paranoia, and rage because you don't have the language to express your love. You don't have the language to express the soft side of your love, so you express it through control, through resentment, through guilt. Because being vulnerable with love is too intimate, it's too exposing, it's too terrifying. You don't have confidence in it because your love is not connected to your pain, not connected to a passion that allows you to still love, and who cares what the pain is. See, so you can have hatred that says, who the fuck cares? I'm going to do this. This matters.
Right.
You can also have love that's connected to your passion and say, fuck it. This is worth living and dying for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See, this is a love and a passion that goes beyond fucking manipulation through guilt. Trying to control attachment. That's baby stuff. Let's grow up and be adults and stop trying to control each other.
Mm.
Let's get a love that destroys and makes life worth living.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the destructive side of love. It destroys egos, destroys stories. It's about the next level. It's about
breaking
how
through
far
that.
can it go.
Okay.
Breaking. New breakthroughs.
Nice.
Heartbreak into more love. More passion.
Hmm.
That's something worth living for. That's where it's connected to death. You don't really know what you love until you're willing to die for something. That's some idiom.
Hmm.
Oh, that could be a good closing song, but I don't have that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us the diagrams that you used?
I'll put it in chat.
For text. Thank you.
Okay. Summary back. Maybe. So the hard sell, the reason why it was hard to sell is because the way we talk academically, breaking things up into different categories and framings and linear maps and bullshit, like this one, we're programmed to digest it from a superego. We're programmed to judge what's good or bad. So we're programmed to take our judgment and say, denial splitting is bad, or transference is bad, or oceanic merging is bad, and disowning is bad, and this is the right way and this is the wrong way. That's all bullshit. Because at the core, it's all love, and it's the pain and grief of the human existence. If we stay at this level of categories and framing the map, the fucked up map, the meta map, this is just an overview. This is not how you live. This is just to help clear some confusion so you can love more. Don't get lost in the map. Don't use the map to try to feel safe. That's the trap of the superego. This talk lacked the sort of lived experience because I suck. And it's an impossible topic. I was going to try to frame around stories, but I gave up on that. Maybe in the future. Because what you need is an experience.
It's a need of an experience, not an explanation. It's a need of an experience, not an explanation. It's a need of an experience, not an explanation.
And the experience will get you closer to guilt and hatred and rage, which will allow you to express what you care about, what fucking matters. And then with that, if you can play out that hatred of what matters, then you can get to your core grief and pain. And then now you need a witness to express your unresolved, unexpressed love of what matters of the past, so now you can direct it into the future. You can direct it into now. You can direct it into new relationships. Like, well, you're being fake with me. I want to see you fully. Or I don't feel that you're seeing me fully. You can talk from just love to love, heart to heart. I got to figure out how to create an environment that's more conducive to that. How can we demand heart-to-heart realness? If I had the tone quality of black people, I might be able to express that. Or maybe that's why we don't have a neocon. So there is this sort of emphatic love that can be expressed with a fierceness that gives a visceral experience. That's sort of the experience, not the explanation. That's way up here.
Where is the fucking compassion to just say, wow, you know, that's what's going on in her world? Where is the fucking compassion? 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 Amir Khan has spoken. Okay, I'm done. Amir Khan has spoken. Okay, I'm done. Amir Khan has spoken. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Okay.
What if you're scared of love? Or
then
given
you gotta
love?
feel the fear.
Okay.
That's part of going into love. That's true love. Love is terrifying. Love is risky. Love is vulnerable. Actually, if the love isn't scary, it's probably not worth, it's not real love, isn't it? Love needs some terror, needs some fear. I didn't get to use my other memes. It was like...
He's interacting with the transference. 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 He's relax. It's not your fault. It's just what he does. It's what he does with everyone. It's nothing personal. Relax. It's not your fault. It's just what he does. It's what he does with everyone. It's nothing personal. Relax. It's not. He's interacting with the transference. He's interacting with the transference. He's interacting.
Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life. Transference neurosis, the most
this is pretty interesting.
Person in the patient's life.
Because you deny your natural expression of love, you make transference the most important interaction, and that's how you let your love come out sideways. That's why we're so desperate when we get insulted. To be seen. That's our love. That's a desire. That's a safe way for us to express, this is fucking important. I want the world to be this way, or I want to be seen here. That's a sideways way of expressing love in a safer way. And guaranteeing you're not going to be seen. Because it's too much. It's too intense.
Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life. Transference neurosis, the most important person in the patient's life.
But if we realize transference isn't personal, now we can just play it like a constant drama. We're just in theater. So then we just...
Relax. It's not your fault. It's just what he does. It's what he does with everyone. It's nothing personal. Relax. It's not your fault. It's just what he does. It's what he does with everyone. It's nothing personal.
So when we feel transference and someone's treating this is life or death, then we can just act it out for them. Because we realize it's not personal. It's all just an act. People are just acting out their unresolved emotions. So let's play into people's delusions and have some fun. Let's make life a psychodrama, because learning psychodrama takes like 10,000 hours and no one does it anymore because it's too many hours and it's too nuanced. And Moreno's dead, the founder, so psychodrama is a lost art for therapy. Or you can learn family constellations, constellation, whatever, or something, which is similar territory. Ooh. I had this as an end song. I don't know how the lyrics match. Since we have some more musical people, how would this have landed?
Caught up in heaven, but your heaven ain't the same. And I've never been a saint, have I?
Why do they look so numb?
But I'm never one to change
Oh, these are awesomes. So we can explain it. Half my life. Complete. A complete mess. Splitting. In the early chapters of Freud's, what was it? Civilization and the Discontents. Was it chapter 1 or 2? He talked about the oceanic feeling of wholeness, limitless, eternity. And he described that as a religious feeling that he couldn't relate to. So that oneness feeling was part of his framework of why religions happen and superegos happen, because there is that oceanic merging, that complete mess type of merging, that sort of amazing feeling. And then he theorized that oceanic feeling was replicated through religions, and maybe through the faith healing stuff, or even musical concerts. And then that's our way of trying to merge back with source. And some people are more wired for that sort of oceanic merging, oceanic feeling than others.
Yeah, I know that one. I have it when walking in nature, and I had it very strongly when being on the volcanic islands. So for me, that's quite easy. But I don't see it as merging. It's more like dissolving.
There. Freud himself cannot experience this feeling of dissolution, but notes there exists a different pathological and healthy states of love, where boundary between ego and object is lost, blurred, oceanic feeling, dissolution. We're not really hacking any new territory. Well, let me upload some of my clip arts, if I can find them. So do people understand transference any better? That was sort of the goal. Are you more empowered to face transference and not get caught up in repetition compulsion?
Yeah, I didn't place or make the connection with the transference and the snapshot thing before. I guess that's a different way of framing it for me that it makes a little more sense.
And then if you link it to the feeling of being invisible, being negated, by having a projection, a snapshot, a transference figure put on top of you, then you can feel the feeling of someone trying to transfer a project a transference image on top of you, a snapshot.
Right. Yeah, because the snapshot in itself seems rather benign, without any, Yeah, it needs that other step,
That's the other side of masking. So if codependents are fawn selves, where you put on a mask and not be seen, narcissism might be projecting a mask onto other people. a snapshot. And then maybe a codependent says, oh, this narcissist has a snapshot mask. This is perfect. He's giving me instructions to shapeshift my fawn. This is true love.